Hi, and welcome to Spiritual Alchemy Energy, the podcast with Julie. Tonight, I have Deb Acker, author and healer, scheduled to come on. I'm just hanging out until my guest gets here. Hopefully she shows. I got a confirmation yesterday. So this was an interesting book. It's a really great book. Do I have anybody with me tonight? Nobody's watching right now. I want her to talk about her book. I started reading, and so this is about your spiritual healing. And I hate reading, but this is a really good book. I need to go back and finish. But I ended up going off on my own tangent and writing down what I need to heal. So, hi, Cassidy. Maybe I will just do a, you want a reading, Cassidy? I can do a reading. Anybody out there watching? I can tap into, oh, here we go. Here we go. Hello, Deb.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me tonight. I guess we're not going to do any readings. We have a guest with us.
Oh.
Thank you, Cassidy. So I was just saying I'm not a real big reader, but I sat down and I attempted to read. And I'm in the middle, I'm going through my own spiritual healing here. So I ended up writing down my stuff. So thank you for being here tonight. Deb's an author and a healer, and this really great book. I love it. So, you're a twin sister. Let's kind of like tell your little background story because it weaves all the way through the book. So
No. So really my story and my journey, I always say began before the age of 2. And it was at that point in my life where my dad was leaving. And at the time, of course, he wasn't leaving me. He was leaving my mom. That would really single-handedly kind of start my path and start my journey. And as you mentioned, I grew up with a twin sister. So we both kind of we had our own interweaving paths with that. But basically with my dad, leaving before I was 2, going into my childhood, being in my childhood, a lot of what I did was, to people please, to make sure no one else would leave me. I lost a lot of myself. I lost my sense of self and who I was. I disconnected from my emotions because it wasn't really safe to know what I was feeling, let alone communicate that in my environment. Again, a lot of times for fear of abandonment. And that was all subconscious. And as part of that, what happened was when I was throughout childhood, I was terrified. My mother was my primary support system at that point, and I was terrified that I would, that something could happen to her. And what ended up happening was when I was 17, she ended up passing away from cancer. And I always say that was like single-handedly the most devastating moment of my life. And those 2 junctures of my dad leaving before I was 2, my mom passing away when I was 17, those set up my path and my journey of abandonment. And how do I actually heal that? Which at that point in time, I was just kind of going into the world, trying to manage my experience, trying to manage all of those pieces. But I would eventually get on the path of realizing really that I had this abandonment pattern, because so many of us, myself included, don't think of abandonment like that. We think of abandonment as being left on the streets.
right.
And so I would eventually realize, oh wait, I have a deep rooted abandonment pattern, which a lot of times gets rooted in addition to those 2 ways, can get rooted in from addiction in the family. It can get rooted in from having emotionally or physically unavailable parents. So if your parents worked a lot, that's a way that abandonment, even though, again, we get taught to really value that in our society. But yeah, so that's part of how all of abandonment gets rooted in. And then what would happen is eventually after enough, what was happening was I wasn't having a lot of success in dating, go figure. I kept attracting emotionally and or physically unavailable partners. And what was happening was because I associated love equaled having physical unavailability or emotional unavailability subconsciously. So I kept attracting that over and over and over again. And so eventually what I did is I decided I was going to do something different to create a different result. And that really set me off on how do I actually heal my abandonment pattern? How do I work through, because I had a lot of forgiveness work to do with my dad. So how do I do that in a really true way, right? Where it's rooted in love and it's not just rooted in us saying the words, I forgive him, right? But it really was like deeply embodied in me. And how do we heal our deepest rooted relationship patterns? How do we heal our deepest rooted patterns? So yeah, so that was, that was a huge part of my path and my journey.
The beginning of it.
The beginning of it.
Well,
yes, the beginning of it.
It sounds like, well, you know, I went off on my little tangent to like go heal myself. So I'm like, where you went to a retreat, which I believe was probably life-changing for you. And I'm not sure if you knew you had this abandonment pattern prior to that.
Yeah, so I sort of did. Like we had sort of identified it. I was in therapy for many years, what I call unsuccessful therapy, where I had awareness of, I had an awareness at that point. I think just my consciousness was that my dad leaving was having an impact on my dating. Like I think I had, like that was the level of consciousness and awareness I had. I did not even connect at all that my mother, you know, passing away, that had anything to do with abandonment. I did not realize, I mean, obviously I knew it was really defining, but I didn't realize that it was anything besides, this is an extremely defining moment in my life. And so, yeah, so this retreat that I went on was really all about childhood patterns and how do we start to heal ourselves. And I just naturally could start to see all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more here than I was just going, I was like, I just want to find love. Like, is this gonna work? Like, is this it? Like, good, I'll do this. And then, you know, hopefully it'll work to start to change things. But little did I know, I mean, there's a lot more details to this that I actually didn't have consciousness around, I think, when I wrote this book. But like one piece of it is, yes, it is crazy how we do, like we repeat our childhood traumas in all of our adult relationships until they are healed. Absolutely. You know, but one of the things that I realized just like recently was I had set it up as a soul. So for all the old souls out there that are listening to this, like this is so crucial, but I had set it up as a soul that I could not get into a long-term love relationship until I had forgiven my dad, until I had healed my abandonment pattern, which people tell you is not even possible, right? Like they're like, oh, you're just going to be managing this, you know, your entire life. And I had set it up as a soul that those were required. So every single time I would get into a relationship, what it was doing brilliantly was it was showing me all the things that I had left to heal that would complete it. But at the time, it just felt like I was unsuccessful at it. I felt like I just couldn't get it right. So yeah, so it definitely, you know, felt it had that space or that piece. And so that was extremely hard. It was difficult to keep going through that. And it was frustrating because it was like, what is it going to take for me to actually heal these patterns and then eventually move my way into an actual love partnership that wasn't going to just sort of blow up in a few weeks or 6 months or 3 months or whatever it was. There were a lot of different variations on that. But
right.
And so I think a lot of us struggle with that, right? We're like, because we don't realize we have these contracts in place and we keep thinking it's not working instead of going, wait, it's working. We're being brought to what we need to be brought to be healed to have the relationship that we really truly desire and want.
So because you mentioned contracts, soul contracts, so I don't think you really dove into it too deep in your book here.
No, I didn't, because I don't think I had full consciousness around it at that point. Yes.
So I think I probably have a similar contract of like killing abandonment, but this is like stretches back like other lifetimes too. So it's gotten really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a huge part of my path was I had tried to heal my abandonment in many lifetimes, and I kept trying to set up, you know, I say in the book, I talk about we set up the perfect circumstances to really heal our pattern, right? And to heal these patterns. And I kept trying to set up these things that would ignite the healing. And every like single time, like however I did as a soul, I just didn't get to the point where I was complete. So I kept setting this contract up. I was like, I'm going to do it again. Here's another set of circumstances that will maybe, you know, I'll wake up, I'll remember, and I'll actually move towards it and be able to complete it. And so, I mean, I did that, like I checked in, I think I did it in like 100 lifetimes or something. So it's like, it's really one of those things where you just keep doing it and you make maybe some progress, but it's so frustrating because as a soul, we're just like, you know, especially I think there's more old soul women, conscious women on the planet right now. Like men are waking up and I totally praise them and it's awesome.
Right.
But there are definitely more, you know, women that are in that journey and in that peace. So here are all these like women, people that decided to come in as women, souls that decided they're going to come in as women in this lifetime. And they came in as, you know, women, and they're like, I'm going to heal this and I'm going to find love. And then a bunch of us all get kind of like, we end up in sort of like, we're these older women that are searching for love and we haven't healed our stuff, healed our patterns, and we don't know why it's not working.
And we have 12 cats and
yeah. Whatever your variation is on 12 cats.
Right. So, you know, you did a really great job writing this book, interweaving yourself, exposing yourself and walking, because each chapter is set up with a story that relates to the life lesson and healing that life lesson. And so in the beginning, it's, you know, talking about inner child work and talking to the inner child. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe talk on that to the audience and what that looks like to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. Most of us, you know, are working on healing our relationship patterns. We're working on healing our childhood patterns. A massive component that a lot of times gets left out, right, is inner child work. So what is inner child work? Well, we all have a little girl or little boy that lives inside of us, and that little girl or little boy, they had dreams and desires and hopes, and they also had things that really hurt them. Now, these things may have appeared significant, like the two things that I mentioned with my dad leaving and my mom passing away, or they might appear just like where your parents left you one day and didn't communicate properly and they went to the grocery store. And that was very traumatic to you, even though that was just a normal everyday occurrence. And what happens is that in our childhood, especially if you went through some kind of abandonment, but this can be, we abandon ourselves even if you don't have a typical abandonment definition. So what happens is in our childhood, we keep leaving ourselves, right? We make ourselves wrong. Like if someone makes fun of you, what happens? A lot of times we take their side subconsciously as opposed to taking our own side, right? There's like so many different various ways that this can show up. And what ends up happening is there's a separation between the little girl that lives inside of us and us, like who we are as an adult. And until that little girl is acknowledged and honored and really just every single experience in her life, you know, is cherished, honored, like her feelings, her experience. Until all of that happens, what ends up happening is subconsciously, or at least in part, what ends up happening is we start to create moments that bring up that energy in our everyday experience. So one of the common ones is around anger. So there's a lot of anger right now in our world, understandably, but there's a lot of anger in our world. And one reason that is being brought up is from childhood trauma, and it's rooted in our desire to be seen. So we haven't felt seen. We didn't feel seen as a child. So one way that we maybe felt seen was when we caused an argument or a fight or some kind of drama in our life. And so we learned that subconsciously as a paradigm to get seen. And so now what's happening in part, it's oversimplification, but this is just one example.
Right.
You know, is that can come up, and that's coming up just so for us to feel seen as adults, and for our inner child to also feel seen, for her to be acknowledged and say, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry that they are not honoring your experience right now, for instance. So if we take that example and we look at that, and I in my coaching sessions with my clients, I walk my clients through these in depth, right? But I'm going to give you a really simple way that I like to do this. So I always will say, you know, around connect with your inner child. So again, you might see this person in front of you. You might feel them in your heart. A couple of things that can happen if we've never had that relationship is that they can be angry at us. So they may not really want to talk to you, and or they might feel invisible, because if you haven't acknowledged them for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right, they might feel invisible. And so you might be able to see them or see them, or however they come to you, feel them, sense them. And so what happens in that moment is I'll guide them to connect to that part of them. And if you don't see them, or if you feel that they're so angry at you, just saying out loud in the present tense, I feel invisible right now. If they're invisible, right? I feel invisible right now. I am so invisible right now. And you can just feel it. I don't know if you can feel, but the space opened up just even in that 3 seconds of me saying that out loud. It got lighter. It got a little bit more open. That is a shift that's happening. So if someone is feeling, invisible, that's where to start. If they're feeling angry, you might say, I'm so angry at you. And this has to be in the present tense. And you're saying this not to reinforce it or get caught up in your story. You're saying this to start to see it leaving you, because it's stored in your body right now. It's stored in your cells. And so the more that you can acknowledge it, the more it's going to start to leave. But that conversation with the inner child can just begin with, what do you want me to know right now? What do you want me to know right now? And again, she may not talk to you, because again, if you haven't had that relationship, there's a big separation. But as you start to build that, it's like, even like, you had a bad day at work. It's like, hey, tell me what that was like for you at work today. And I felt invisible in that meeting. Like, I'm so mad that my boss didn't acknowledge my idea, whatever it is, present tense with the idea that it's leaving you, saying it until it holds no charge for you. So you want to say it until literally it's like no charge. It's not just saying it once, but it's like, you could say it 5 times, 10 times, until you're like, if you feel angry, if you can feel that, like, oh, I'm so freaking mad right now, right? Like, whatever comes up for you, when you can start to acknowledge that, that's how we start to feel safer with ourselves. That's how we start to move closer to ourselves. And the safer we feel with ourselves, the safer we feel in our relationships, the safer we will feel in our world.
Right. That has a direct connection to our abandonment. I'll tell you, my little girl, she was in a dark room. She didn't want to come out. She was like, no, hell no. I'm not coming out.
No, I mean, and so that piece, it's like, just acknowledge, don't make her come out. Because a lot of people are like, let's bring her out. It's like, if she doesn't want to come out, that's perfect, right? It's like, hey, I know you're scared right now. When we can start to build that dialogue and build that relationship with her and go, hey, yeah, I get, like, it's hard. I get that sucks. I get that this is like, that you're scared, and it's okay to be scared. And even just saying, I'm scared, I'm really scared right now, or whatever that she's feeling, like all that, then it starts to create trust, because what we've done is we've broken their trust.
Right.
So of course they don't trust us, understandably. Right. And
right.
so beating up on yourself. Like when I say that, it's not like go leave this call and go, I'm saying I broke my trust. It's just about, okay, how do I rebuild that trust, right? How do I love myself even more and acknowledge my experience as a child and as an adult?
Right. Right. We're the same person, really.
Yeah.
I've coaxed her out. She's kind of out of that room.
Yeah. No, no.
You know,
It's just a great example for people that might be going through the same thing.
I have a question as far as how much is abandonment connected to rejection?
I mean, we can create rejection. So if you associate failure, rejection in ways that like where it somehow served you, right? Again, where you felt like seen. That for some reason that's coming up as a theme on our conversation, right? But where you felt seen, right? Then you will continue to create rejection. You will continue to create that. Now, so they can all be intertwined or interweaved depending on where someone is on their path. So I mean, it's very situational, and understand, like, if we are creating rejection in our field, a lot of times there's something deeper than that. There's a deeper root, and that deeper root often is tied to abandonment. Right. So I'll give you another example that showed up. I was working with someone, and she came to me with, like, this perfection pattern was really defining her. It was really in her field. Right. And she had seen so many coaches and therapists, and nobody had told her that. I was like, your perfection pattern isn't the root of your issue, right? Like that's just like, we create perfection as a surface level to something much deeper. Just like I would say, and why I brought that up a little bit is because rejection, any kind of rejection, failure, those are more of the surface level issue. And then there's something deeper, right? That's wanting to be called forth, right? That's wanting to be seen. And so it's like, I wonder why I'm creating perfectionism in my field. I wonder why. I believe we create everything, which I know can be a drastic idea for people. But to me, if we believe that, then we get to take responsibility, and you actually are in charge of your life versus sort of like, oh no, something haphazardly happened to me now and I don't have control of that. So to me, this is how we start to really take control of what's happening and create the good things. But so much of the time we can create rejection, or we can create failure, or sort of more of there are things that suck, but they're more of like a topical thing, and deep down they're rooted in, this is how I've learned to function, again, maybe to be seen because I wasn't seen because I was abandoned, maybe to be loved because I didn't feel loved because I was abandoned, so they can all kind of thread back or connect back. A lot of times abandonment, I mean, that's one of the core things that I'm, really specialized in, but it can be other trauma too as well. But a lot of times, so much of the trauma in the field for so many people is abandonment, even though it's not been classically defined that way.
So, a lot of times we disconnect from our own feelings and emotions so that we can just move along in life. And that's, getting back to like feeling your feelings and your emotions like you did in your retreat. And you just screamed out in pain. That's something I've had to learn how to do myself over the last few years, because like, oh, you can't feel that way. You're not supposed to feel that way. You're not supposed to, you're not supposed to cry.
Yeah. So many of us old souls, a lot of us are empaths. We've been told in our family dynamic that we are too emotional or we are too much, right? I experienced that. And first of all, part of the fun is to actually bring forth that too muchness, right? It's like we kind of came here to, like, if you imagine, to stir the pot and sort of just bring that forward. And like, it's like, oh, cool, I get to be the person in my family that blow shit up and like,
karma,
that dynamic, right? And I will say, because that's already part of so many of us, the more we can own that, right? The more we can embrace that, the more we can develop practices of like, what works for me to feel my feelings versus hiding or contracting or like tiptoeing around. The tiptoeing, again, was we didn't want to be, a lot of times, be abandoned. So we're like, okay, I'm not going to say what I came to say. But so many of us that are intuitives, that are old souls, that are empaths, we really are like, we're the light workers in our family. And we are the people that like came to sort of just like, really, it's like, I'm going to show you the truth. You know, and it's like,
right. Exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Exactly. No, I'm just agreeing with you. Exactly. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the importance of embracing that, right? The importance of really, instead, because what we do is we tend to kind of go, you know, like, I'm going to try to be less of that, right? Instead of going, you know what? I'm going to have that and then some, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I'm the person who's going to really, like, you know, show them the truth, right? Oh, well, you know, it's like, and then what happens is the more comfortable we get with that, a lot of times in our family dynamics, that gets reflected. So it's a really beautiful thing that the more we can embrace that, the more we can learn how to embrace our emotions and feel our feelings and honor our feelings. Not only does that get reflected in our family dynamic, it gets reflected in all of our relationships.
Mm-hmm. Speaking our truth.
Yeah, speaking our truth and feeling our feelings and embracing those and really honoring those and staying connected to ourselves, because again, so many of us haven't been taught, how do we have a relationship with ourselves? How do we connect to ourselves and stay connected? We've sort of left ourselves. We left our bodies. I mean, a lot of our environments, if you have
Exactly.
any kind of trauma in your environment, most of us like just are like, I don't want to be here. And a lot of us play that programming for decades. I don't want to be here. Some version of that programming, or it'll come up and then it'll go down, and then it'll come up and then it'll go down. And so that space of like practicing, okay, how can I be in my body? How can I stay with that feeling versus doing something to medicate or escape or, you know, leave, you know, just sort of like zone out. Like, what can I do to zone out? Instead of that, it's like, okay, can I be in the practice of staying with this emotion for 30 seconds or for a minute? Can I be in that space of just really owning that and honoring that, and just really, it's a hell yes to yourself. I mean, it's a hell yes to who you are, especially too, if you're wired to be emotional, if you're wired that way, how, like, the key is to learn how to love that part of you. Be like, woo, I'm so emotional. Yes to the emotions, instead of, oh gosh, like, here it comes again, and I'm going to be that person that's going to create an issue in my family dynamic, or create an issue, and no one's going to want to be around me. It's like, here I come. You know, just embracing that space and embracing that peace.
Oh boy. So these processes of healing, you have to have patience. A lot of patience in doing. Some things you'll get just like that. Other things, oh, here comes another pattern. Here comes, you see it like, oh, well, okay, I don't know if I'm going to deal with that right now. But I want to get to impatience, waiting for something to happen. I'm so guilty of being impatient. And so many, especially in our instantaneous lives with everything that's so instantaneous, wanting it to happen now rather than be patient. Can you speak to this? Is this something that comes up a lot?
Well, so it's interesting. I was smiling because I'm like, it's kind of relevant in my world right now. So I'm just like smiling that you're bringing this up. out of all the things that I like mentioned in my book, right? And so here's the piece of it. There's like divine timing, or just the perfection in the timing that it lays out. And there can be this forced timing, or this rush, or this push. And sort of the ways, it's really important that we look at those ways of like, okay, what are the ideas that I have about this, that obviously there's that idea and there's the way it wants to unfold. And how am you say it like this, how am I contracting the energy by not allowing it to unfold the way it wants to unfold, right? And then how can I be in this practice of surrender, right? Mm-hmm. How can I be in this practice of, trusting my path and trusting that peace, as opposed to, I have my agenda and I have my timeline.
Right.
Not aligning with my timeline, because I've this idea
right.
that
Come on.
Yeah, get on it. That's my timeline, right? And so, and I've been like at a personal level, I'm getting a major lesson in open space. I'm getting a major lesson in waiting for the divine timing versus the timing that I would like it to be or have in my head. And there's that space where we can take massive action, but it's massive action without attachment. So a lot of us take this massive action, this idea of like, this is going to get me there, or this is going to get me to that space, or going to get me the thing that I'm wanting. And instead saying, okay, I'm choosing this, and I'm going to energetically choose it, which is like holding the energy and being, like whatever it is you're waiting on. And then also I'm going to physically take action in this physical world that brings me closer to that thing. But take it without this idea of like, that's the thing that's going to get me to the thing that I want, I've been waiting on. Right. So when we can just relax, surrender into the process, which I know these are all like these spiritual words, right? But right. It's a practice. Years ago, before I got into this work, a lot of times people would just say like, let go, relax. Like I would say all these things. Right. I was like, I didn't know how to do that. It was just actually around dating. I remember like my friends just being like, because I'd want to know like what was going to happen, or if they were going to call, or that whole dynamic that we can get into. And I just remember them saying this. So it's like, back off, step back. It's like, and I didn't have the space at that time to do that. But what we are doing, and what's so important, is we are wiring our bodies to have more and more practice in that as a function, so that it becomes easier and easier. So we're not trying to go from A to Z. We're going from A to B. And it's like, maybe the first time it's like, I literally just force. Then I force a little, and then I take a step back, but then I force some more, and then it's like, it's those steps that keep gradually, all of a sudden, before you know it. And this was my experience with what I just described with dating. It's like, at some point it was just like, I'm not doing the work for you. And I'm not going to sit in the space of worrying about this or worrying about this dynamic. I'm going to step back. I'm going to relax into it, which is a total feminine practice of getting into our lower part of our body, and really breathing into our hips and breathing into our legs, right? And just being like, I'm not going to do the work for you. It's one example in dating. And then that space of like, okay, so I'm doing that. And then, it's like, it becomes easier. Ooh, I'm surrendering a little bit more. Open space, sitting in open space is a feminine practice. So years ago, I was in a class with one of my teachers, and he was talking about this practice. He had us doing this practice with a partner across from us of, we were looking, I think, into their eyes, and we were saying, I'd wait for you forever. I'd wait for you forever. And that inherently, if you can get embodied in it and really like practice it, it's this rewiring of like, again, I'm not going to do the work for you. I'm not going to fill the space here. When you want to call me in 2 weeks, okay, we're going to wait that way, And so it's not about being passive. It's about you got to do what feels right. But also most of us, if we're initiating and forcing and pushing, that's not really because it feels right. It's because we feel uncomfortable, and we're doing something to try to cover up the discomfort, instead of going, okay, why am I uncomfortable here? I'm uncomfortable because I don't know what's going to happen. And I can pull back from that and go, okay, I'm uncomfortable because I don't know what's going to happen. Not just try to fill the space with like, I'm going to call him because I'm uncomfortable and I don't want to sit in this space anymore.
Right. I'm not used to this being uncomfortable.
So every practice is a practice in wiring ourselves for more and more of that expansion and more. I don't want to say it's like it is rewiring ourselves for more discomfort, but it's not because we're trying to create discomfort. It's you're rewiring yourself so all of a sudden it doesn't feel uncomfortable.
It's learning how to wait, basically, and allow it, that feminine energy, drawing in that feminine energy of receiving.
Yeah. And how do we sit in that space and trust our experience and trust this unfolding, right? And trust that we are going to get the lessons and the things that we need in that dynamic.
Yeah, I asked Spirit not too long ago on this project I'm working on, and they answered. I heard, the world's not ready for you yet, and you're not ready for the world yet. And so there you go. It's just divine timing. You got to wait. So
yeah, and you keep following. Guidance is great. You know, I mean, I like the way I relate in the world at this point is my intuition is part of an every minute, like my intuition, my guides and angels, those are all part of an every minute, every hour experience for me. Right. And so this is a relationship, right? So you're continually practicing, like, how do I start to connect and relate to my guides and angels? What does my intuition, which is another relationship, what does that look like? You know, and what does it look like when I'm being guided? What does it look like when I'm being sent in this direction? And then it's like, you know, so today I was in a coaching call with someone, with a coach of mine, and she was, she was talking to me, and she brought up something to take action towards. And I had an awareness, but it was like, I knew that it wasn't really, it came from my head more than my intuition or my guides. So after we got off the call, I sat down with my guides and my intuition, and I was like, okay, I know she's onto something. I know, like, this is like, there's something there. Like, let's talk about what this would actually look like that will feel right to me, and not just because someone told me or an authority figure told me this is what you should do, that I'm doing that. And so that was so important and crucial, because I opened to this idea, and I decided I was going to take some action towards that. And then I also was like, I'm going to stay connected to myself and my truth and be the main authority in my life.
I need to read this, as I have audio listeners too. I am loving how beautifully you blend spirituality and therapy in this perfect merge of info. This is going to help so many.
Cassidy, thank you. Thank you so much.
And there was something you said that was, I lost it. Oh, you mentioned when we work with people, other healers, I think it's very important. You mentioned this. You had to have a powwow with your peoples after, right?
Yep.
So, so I think it's really important, because I have experienced this in my healing, and I probably have done it as a healer, and I tried with my clients, I am not the gospel. You need to listen to yourself. You need to discern for yourself what this means, because I am not the all-knowing.
Yes. As coaches, guides, healers, we are the guide. We are not, source. I mean, we're source, but we're not your source. Like we're making suggestions. We're opening to things. We're guiding our clients. And the goal is to put everyone on their own path, right? To connect them so deeply to their own guidance and their own awarenesses and their own truth, that they are living from that space and not living as I'm reaching to someone else to be my source in this dynamic, which, let's face it, like our parental dynamic set us up for that from day one, right? You are my source. If I don't make you my source, I will die, you know? And so inherently that is the conditioning. And so now we've got to work out of that space, right? We've got to work out of that piece and go, it's not working out. It's like, how do we shift that relationship to center into ourselves, to center into our truth, into our guidance, and really get grounded in like the wisdom from within.
Well, you know, how do we do this when we bring children into the world? And everything would be beautiful. We wouldn't have these, we probably wouldn't be talking.
So, I mean, here's the thing. First and foremost, so I always call myself like I believe everyone is my child. Like that's how I've always like seen myself in the world. I'm not a parent in the practical sense of a parent. And what I will say is when our souls, you know, we pick the perfect parents for ourselves. So if you're a parent and you are listening to this, no, you cannot do it wrong, right? No matter what you do, your children chose you to show up for them exactly how they are, like how you are showing up for them. So that right there, just like lets a weight off of it, right? Like, because what happens is we keep trying. We're like, oh my God, this decision's gonna mess them up, and this decision's like, oh no, you know. And so, and I have been a parent in the practical sense in other lifetimes, right? Just not in this one. And what I will say is, so there's that space of it. Then I will also say, I'll share a story. So years ago, I've always had this theory, and I plan to bring this kind of programming, you know, to the world at some point. It's not my main focus right now. But years ago, I met with a woman who was a parent, and I was at her house, and she wanted to meet me because we had different aspects of it, but we were both kind of had similar approaches to emotions, right? And how we deal with emotions and feeling our feelings. And this was many years ago. And what ended up happening is I'm sitting down with her family and her 2 young children, and she had given them the space to feel their feelings regularly, right? That when something happened in their world and they were upset, that at some point, it might not be in the grocery store, but at some point when they got home that day or later on in the week or that weekend, it's like, hey, what was that like for you? And it's like that, I wanted those cookies, like this is my version of that. I know. Right. This is how I would do it. But like, I would sit down with my children and I'd say, let's talk about what happened. So what happens as a result of that is those emotions no longer getting stored in the body. Right. So being with these children, they were like 5 and 7 years old or somewhere in that age range. What happened was, and this isn't the goal, but it was like sitting with adults, because they weren't just like literally storing every disappointment and every negative experience, right? It was like they'd have an experience, we're going to have challenges. It's not about avoiding those challenges. It's like, how do I work through those challenges and use those to actually, really grow and experience. And of course they had chosen her as a parent specifically to have, to learn how to do this probably at an early age, right? Or that would be one of infinite possibilities, one likely possibility of infinite possibilities. And so that space of like, okay, can I let my child actually be where they are now? Again, doesn't mean that you're sitting at the hair salon and you're like, hey, let's tantrum time, but it's like, when we get home, can we talk about that? Can I cultivate that space with them where we talk about that and I understand why they were upset and I give them that voice. And then I also give them the space to feel it or to act it out, if that's what they want and they need, or what you feel they need, or they feel that they need or would like to do.
Yeah, we need different programming in this world.
Yeah. But again, you can't do it wrong. Like seriously, like I say, I don't know how much my dad fully understands this, but it's like, I'm like, Dad, you did it perfectly. Like him showing up exactly the way he did was a huge igniter, mixed with my mother, our own versions of that. But those 2 things were huge igniters for putting me on my path, right? So that's part of how we have purpose as parents, right? Is that we help our children go on the paths that they were meant to be on. So it is perfect, no matter whether you did something and you're like, oh my God, I just messed my child up royally. You did not, right? It's part of their path. It's part of why they chose you.
Okay.
You know?
All right. Yeah. I have 2 sons, but I'm not worried about them because I'm a wonderful mom. They have something else to say about it. Okay, so we kind of did talk about listening to our intuition. I don't think we dove deep into like talking about really, on a, you do this, you practice this every minute of every day, listening to your intuition.
Yes.
And, do you coach people to get into their intuition and listening to it?
Yeah. Well, and what happens is the more we heal, the more connected we are to the intuition that's always coming through, but we may not be tuned to it. So the more we heal, it's like I always, and I maybe talk about this example in the book, but I talk about like we perceive we're wearing like a sheer bodysuit, but we're really wearing this like big sumo wrestling costume. And the more we heal, we just keep peeling layer upon layer. And it's like that sheer bodysuit that gives you totally clear access to your intuition, right? That helps you to tune in and be able to have your intuition that comes through in many different ways, which can be, feeling like gut feelings or just knowing something, but it can also be a little more tangible where you get a vision of something or you hear something, which might be in your own voice. Your intuition can come through in your own voice, right? So it's really understanding how your intuition comes through, which every single person's intuition can come through differently. And as a soul, you set it up for your languaging. So one of the fun things about my languaging, my intuition's languaging that I set up as a soul is my no is a you. So why I did that, I just connected. They always would do this, like in my head, it looks like, I'm trying to get in my camera here. Okay. It's a you, right? And I never fully understand. I was like, why is my no? I knew it was a no because I asked, what does it mean? Right. So being willing, like as we start to kind of tune, wait, what does that mean? And I knew it was meant no, but I didn't really get why. And so much of the time, like I'll be saying like, is there more to clear? And they'll go, no. And to me, it's the returning to me, to you. And so that's why I set it up as a you, not as an NO or some other way to say no. So, and my yes is a heart. So it's like it's just like these reminders. So I set those up because like then every time it's running through my programming, those are positive ways. Again, just the return to myself, right? The return to myself and the return to love.
Interesting.
So that's an interesting way. It's a little bit advanced, but just that understanding of like our intuition is always coming through. The more we are healing, the more we are working through our stuff, the more tuned we get to it. And just understanding and starting to look for how your intuition comes through. I mentioned 4 of the main ones and the ways that they can come through, but understanding too that you can open every single person's intuitive, and you can open your intuition and really start to tune to it. So when I was first doing this work, it was mainly feeling and knowing because I had shut down my clairvoyance and clairaudience, or had shut it down more. And so, because I knew things I should have known, and I probably expressed those things, and I got in trouble. And then I was like, I'm never going to know those things again, right? And so you can open all of those. You can clear those blocks. And so again, this path is just this returning to us, right? It's this returning to us and to our truth and who we truly are meant to be.
So in that process of getting in tune with our intuition, do you feel that's like a gateway to open more of our spiritual gifts, obviously, like you were saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that can be one gateway. I mean, we have so many of us, especially too, again, if you're an old soul, if you feel connected to like the intuitive part of you and the empath part of you, you likely set up for your challenges to be part of your path and purpose. You likely did. I mean, that's just so many of us, you didn't just go through all this hard stuff for no reason. So really starting to look at it's like, okay, why am I here? Like what did I come here for? For me, since I was a little girl, and not in the fantasy or fairy tale type way, but since I was a little girl, I always knew I was destined for an amazing love relationship. So I had a memory as a soul, this imprint of like, I am destined for this incredible relationship. And then I didn't really realize like all the things that were in my field that were setting the path for me to learn what I needed to learn, to teach what I wanted to teach, and to share with my gifts with the world. But like, that was always part of my path. And the setup I created was all meant to lead me in that direction. Wherever the game is. It's like, I noticed I have this like flower behind my head. I'm at my dad and stepmom's house. And so this is like a different environment for me. I was like, oh, I have a flower in my head. That's okay.
That's great. Oh my goodness. Oh, well, I get that we set this up. I'm working with two of my past lives. I'm writing this book, and this is the culmination of those two lives and this lifetime. And the more I'm going further and finding out more, the more I believe that I set this all up.
Oh, wise one.
and not just in a contract, like I literally went into different dimensions and did stuff to set this up physically.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing, is that it's like, if there's one thing, like one of many things I can leave you with or implant, right, is this idea of like, we like set up the perfect stage, the perfect set of experiences to have the exact journey and path that we wanted to have, right? And it's like, everything is for you. Everything is, I feel like I sound like a preacher, but it's like, everything is in your favor. Like, there's another lifetime, but it's like, everything is for you. And it's like that realization, okay, if this is for me, how is this supporting me? Not is this supporting me, or it's not supporting me, but how is this supporting me on my path?
Right. And I had another author on, and he worded this so perfectly. And it's like, even the bad stuff that happens, or we perceive it as bad, it's there for a purpose. And if we can not react into it, then we can see the gift it brings.
And so there's a reason why they say it's all good. No, just kidding. So here's the thing. Pain is just joy in disguise. It's all joy waiting to be revealed. So it's either abundance, or it's revealing growth. So it's like, if you can see every challenge is like, okay, this is either going to go the way I want, or it's going to go towards growth. And either way, then I get to win.
Right.
And how is it revealing that how is this joy in disguise? How is this waiting to show me more of myself? Right. And our capacity to own our emotions, to feel more, to go into the depths, versus sort of, and we're getting a MBA in that right now.
Awesome.
Or should I call it an MBA? Anyways.
What would that stand
for? We're getting, an MDA in this practice of like, how do I go deeper? How do I honor my pain? How do I honor like the hard things, right? Instead of avoiding or trying to just go to the light. So years ago, I wrote a blog and I classified them. I didn't want to classify them. My guys were like, it's not levels 1, 2, 3, 4, because as a human, then we're like, oh, I'm in level 1 and that's not good. And I'm in level, but I did A, B, C, D, and A was the physical world. B was the light. C was depth. D was expansion, though E could be expansion, but D was expansion. So, you know, as souls, our first part of the journey is the physical world, right? We're seeing what we're believing what we're seeing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I got it programmed the other way in my consciousness. So I'm like, we're seeing what we're believing. That's really the truth of that reality. But we're believing what we're seeing. That's A, right? B is like, we're going into all the light spiritual places, right? Again, no good or wrong or right, or it's one experience, one choice. C, which is where we're being invited to right now, and the place I love to play, is the depth, because the depth gives you so much more capacity to the light. It also gives you so much more capacity to the physical world, right? And
Right.
D, expansion, we're not even anywhere really. It's a different kind of expansion than just sort of, it is the same, but it's different. There's more to it that we haven't unfolded because we're still got to play in the C. We got to play B and A too. So,
right. And put them all together.
And put them all together, and how do we integrate? And the more light, the more capacity for light, the more capacity for dark, the more capacity for light, right? So the more capacity for our depths, the deeper we're willing to go, the more embodied we are. The more we're gonna have more joy, more light, more excitement, more fun, right? And these things that appear dark right now, which is not to dismiss at all anyone's experience and anyone's challenges during this time, but the things that appear dark are actually light in disguise. And so the more we can learn to play in that and to work in that, the more it's like, no matter what's happening in the outer world, no matter what's happening in our experience, the more we can learn how to play in that, the easier this life becomes. And all of a sudden, no matter what's going on around you, you're centered in you and you're centered in your experience and your joy. Because like I wrote a blog post about this recently, where no matter how much you sink your ship, you cannot save another ship. So we have this thing going on a little bit or a lot, depending on how you're viewing this, where we think, okay, if I get really sad right now, if I go really into the darkness, I'll somehow, it's wrong to be happy. It's wrong to be joyful while everyone else is struggling. And you cannot sink your ship deep enough to save another's. So that space of honoring where you are, and then that space of like, okay, I can let this show me more light if I honor where I am, right? And recognizing that all of a sudden your capacity for light in the darkness will keep growing and keep expanding.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I'm still learning all of this part because there's some nasty stuff. There's just nasty stuff coming up, and it's like, okay,
it's deep.
Where is this taking me now? Where am I going now? What's coming? I'm like, in my writing, I'm like, okay, this is what I think's going to happen, but we're waiting for what's going to happen. So we'll see if
right, and it's
same or different.
Space period. Yeah.
So really great stuff. I think that was my journey the other day when I got notes all over the place. It's terrible around here. Oh, I think this was part of it. Moving out of your comfort zone. Let's talk about that, and we'll end on that note. We have like 2 minutes to talk about it.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So here's the deal. So in sort of another lifetime, it was in this lifetime, but it feels like another lifetime. I was in this group, and my friends nicknamed me Deb the Screaming Banshee, which I don't know if I mentioned that in the book or not. I can't remember if I did, but I'm terrified of heights. Right, I have a total fear of heights, and then I've also skydove, hang glided, zip lined. I mean, you name it, I have done it. And again, what are we doing, or what am I doing? In addition to screaming really loudly, is that I am rewiring my body to have more capacity for fear, for fear of heights specifically in that moment, but also for fear of just leaning into the unknown. So I could be gripping the ground, you know, which is pretty much what I'm trying to do. They don't have handles on the ground. I don't really know why, but they don't have handles. But, you know, I could be, you know, really wanting to like hold on really tightly, and then I lean in. So like I lean in, I bungee jump, I rappel, I've done all those things. It's like, whoa. And I scream really loudly because there's something really liberating about that. There's something really freeing. And even though I don't know if it brings me any closer to being less scared of heights, but it does keep rewiring my body to just lean into more discomfort, to lean into more of that unknown. And that you feel in that high you get when you feel like you've done something that's like, oh my God, I just accomplished my fears. I accomplished all of that. All of that is amazing. So that's in itself is incredible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful, and yes, just it's wonderful to be here.
I want to tell our audience to go visit you at DeborahAcker.com. That's DeborahHacker.com.
Yes.
And you can also get her book at Amazon.
Yeah, on Amazon, yes. At bit.ly, so bit.ly/living deeply book, all lowercase.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that part.
No worries. I'm like smiling.
And one of your biggest things that you do is relationship assessments.
Yes, I have a relationship assessment. And that's all about like, so if you've been struggling in relationships, right, and you are looking to know, to really strongly better understand the truth of why, you know, you are creating pain in your relationship at a deeper level than you probably have ever experienced, because one of my zones of genius is seeing clearly and seeing things clearly and seeing things that most people miss. I would love to talk to you because we will start to unpack that. And then if you're feeling called to dive deeper, we'll talk about what it would look like for us to work together.
I'm sorry, did you just say that you have free consultation?
It's a free, it's a 30-minute, thank you. It's a 30-minute relationship assessment call. Again, we dive deep into really the truth of what's holding you back into relationships. I will help you see things, again, that you probably haven't seen clearly. And then we'll talk about, if it feels right, we'll put together a plan of what it would look like for us to work together.
Fantastic. Thank you again. Please, Deb Acker, her book's Living Deeply. Go check it out.
Cover, the beautiful blue cover. There's two Living Deeply.
It is.
It's that one, yeah.
It's this one.
Oh,
And
I love that cover.
it's beautiful. I want to thank all my viewers tonight and future listeners. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Have a great night.